My debit card was declined for $42 at the notions counter. The morning before, my daughter had withheld the $168 she had promised me for finishing the Lang gown, then told the clerk I no longer did enough work to be paid. If Elise was doing the difficult alterations herself, why did every difficult gown still come through the frosted door to me? I left the thread, needles, and boning tape on the counter. Then I walked back to Bridal, found the workroom copy of Tessa Lang's alteration ticket, and wrote my initials beside the 4 jobs I had completed and the amount still unpaid. I did it before I touched another dress. Nina, our front desk associate, watched me cap the pen. "Mara," she said quietly, "Elise says this one has defective fabric." She rolled a gown through the frosted door. The bodice leaned left on the hanger, but the fabric was not defective. One strap had been pinned shorter than the other, and the side seam had been pulled against the grain. I loosened 3 pins, reset the strap, and asked Nina to hold the hanger straight. The skirt settled as if it had taken a breath. That was the first answer. The gown had not failed. The fitting had. Before noon, Elise stood with the client in front of the 3-way mirror and said, "I balanced the lines so we didn't have to cut into your seam allowance." Those were my words. I had said them to Nina 10 minutes earlier. Through the open edge of the frosted door, I saw Elise write her own initials on the client copy. My initials remained on the workroom copy, tucked into the clear sleeve on the garment bag, where no bride was likely to look. I was 62 then. I had been altering clothes since I was 16. First in the laundry room of the apartment where my mother and I lived, later at a department store, and finally at a small table in my own house. I knew the feel of a seam that could be let out, and one that had already surrendered everything it had. I knew that lace often had to be lifted before a seam could move, and laid back down afterwards so the change looked as though it had never happened. Elise had grown up under that table. When she was 9, she sorted buttons into muffin tins. At 14, she could pin a plain hem if I checked it. At 22, she came home from design school with sketches, polished language, and no patience for the slow corrections that made a garment wearable. She had taste. I will not take that from her. She could look at a plain showroom dress and imagine a cleaner neckline, a softer sleeve, a more modern proportion. She also knew how to make a nervous bride feel that the shop had been waiting just for her. What she did not yet know was how cloth resisted imagination. 7 years before my card was declined, Elise asked me to help her open Bridal alterations in a narrow storefront between a pharmacy and a tax office. She signed the lease. She bought the mirrors and chose the pale gray walls. I brought my own pressing cloths, sleeve board, hand needles, and the old industrial machine I had purchased from the department store when its workroom closed. There was no hidden agreement about the shop. It was hers. In the beginning, that fact did not hurt me. I was proud that my daughter had made a place where our 2 kinds of knowledge could meet. We worked side by side. She handled consultations and design changes. I handled construction, fitting balance, and the jobs that arrived with somebody saying another shop had already tried. On Fridays, she put an envelope in the top drawer of my work table. Some weeks it was more, some less. We never made the arrangement grander than it was, but the envelope was tied to the jobs on the board, and both of us knew it. The shop did well enough to add Nina at the desk and Joe, another adult seamstress, for hems and bridesmaid dresses. That was when Elise began saying clients were confused about who was in charge. The confusion had not troubled her when it brought people back. A woman would call and say, "Can the lady who fixed my sister's sleeves look at mine?" Elise would set the appointment and wheel the dress through to me without correcting the description. If the job went smoothly, she photographed it near the front window and wrote about the shop's custom approach. If I asked whether the post could name the person who had done the reconstruction, she said clients cared about the Bridal name, not individual hands. Once, a bride brought in a gown with a back that collapsed above the waist. Elise had already added cups and tightened the zipper, but neither change held the bodice where it needed to sit. I opened a small section of lining and showed her that the waiststay had been caught too high. "That narrow tape is carrying the dress," I told her. "The zipper only closes it." We reset the stay, and the back rose into place. At the final fitting, Elise stood beside the mirror and explained to the bride how she had rebuilt the internal support. I was behind the frosted door replacing a hook. I remember that job because the problem in her phone call months later would be nearly the same. At the time, though, I treated the borrowed explanation as a daughter still learning how to speak with confidence. I did not yet understand that confidence had become more important to her than knowing where it came from. First, she asked me to stop coming to the front during consultations. Then the workroom door received frosted film. Then my name disappeared from the website's small paragraph about the team. Each change sounded temporary when she explained it. She needed a consistent brand. She needed the front room to feel calm. She needed people to stop treating her as though she had borrowed her mother's business. "I did not borrow it," she told me one evening. "I built it." We were alone in the workroom. A row of garment bags hung between us, white shapes behind clear plastic. "You did build the business," I said. "That does not mean you did every stitch." "See? This is what I mean. You always need your name attached." I looked at the ticket on my table. On the workroom copy, I had written that I had lifted 12 lace motifs, released both side seams, reset the waiststay, and replaced the motifs. On the front copy, Elise had written, "Custom fit redesign by owner." "I need my name attached to my work," I said. She opened the drawer where the Friday envelope should have been. It was empty. "There was rework on the Lang gown," she said. "I had to account for it."
"What rework?"
"The waist was not narrow enough. Tessa had not approved a narrower waist." Elise crossed her arms. "You are proving my point. You still act like every fitting decision belongs to you." "Did Tessa ask for the change?" "She will be happier when she sees it." That answer stayed with me, because it was not about a missed envelope anymore. It was about who was allowed to speak for the person wearing the dress. The next morning, Tessa came for her first full fitting after the major work. She was 31, practical, and more concerned about breathing comfortably than looking smaller in photographs. Her gown had a structured bodice, a soft, square neckline, and a plique that crossed the right side seam in 2 places. Elise welcomed her with coffee and called the remaining work a simple refinement. I came through the frosted door because I needed to see the gown on Tessa before I touched the side seam. Elise's smile tightened, but Tessa turned toward me. "You're the one who marked this last time," she said. "I marked the balance," I answered. "Let's see what changed after the bodice settled." I asked Tessa to raise her arms, sit, and take one full breath. The side seam held, but the applique pulled slightly when she sat. "We can release a little here," I said, touching the seam rather than her body. "Because the lace crosses it, I'll need to lift the edge first. After that, you need one more fit check before pickup." Tessa nodded. "That sounds fine." Elise stepped closer to the mirror. "We can make it a touch narrower at the waist, too. It will photograph beautifully." Tessa looked at her reflection. "I don't want it tighter." "Not tighter. Cleaner." "If it is narrower, it will be tighter," I said. Elise gave a short laugh, the kind used to make a disagreement sound charming. "My mother is very literal. On a fitted bodice, literal is useful." Tessa smiled at that, but Elise did not. On the workroom copy I wrote, "Release right side seam under applique, retain waist ease, fit check required after release." I added the date and my initials. Then I slid the copy back into the clear sleeve attached to the garment bag. On the front copy, Nina scheduled a final fitting for Thursday afternoon. Elise waited until Tessa had left. Then she took the front ticket, drew a line through Thursday, and wrote, "Friday pickup." "She cannot pick it up without trying it," I said. "She has a rehearsal dinner Thursday." "Then we move the fitting earlier."
She trusts us.
"She trusts us to check." Elise tore the narrow appointment strip from the bottom of the front copy and dropped it in the wastebasket. She could remove a reminder from the desk. She could not remove the note already traveling with the gown. I carried that fact to the break alcove, where Nina was eating yogurt with one hand and answering messages with the other. "You heard Tessa keep the wasties," I said. Nina lowered the spoon. "Yes." "And you made the Thursday appointment." "Yes." "If Elise says something different later, will you say what you heard?" Nina looked toward the frosted door. "Mara, I need this job." I felt the answer as a small closing in my chest. "I did not ask whether you needed it." "I know." She put the lid back on the yogurt. "But this is between you and your daughter, and if I step into it, she can cut my hours." It stopped being between us when the instruction went on a client's gown. Nina's face changed, not into agreement, but attention. "I won't lie," she said. "I'm not promising a fight." It was less than I wanted, and more than she had offered before. I knew why Nina measured every word. Her hours had already been cut once during the winter lull, and she had spent 2 months taking weekend shifts at a pharmacy to catch up. She was not my daughter's confidant or my secret ally. She was an employee watching a family argument from a desk where the schedule, the phone, and her rent all seemed to meet. That was why I did not ask her again to take my side. I asked her to keep the client's instruction intact. "If I say something in a fitting," I told her, "write what I say. If Elise changes it, write what she says. You do not have to decide which of us is good. Just do not let 2 different choices become one." Nina considered that. "I can read changes back," she said. "The way a pharmacy reads a prescription back." "Yes." "So the person making the choice hears it." That afternoon, when Elise changed a bridesmaid pickup from Wednesday to Tuesday, Nina repeated the change in front of both of them. "Tuesday at 4, she said. "You are authorizing pickup before the scheduled press check. Is that correct?" Elise stared at her, then said yes. Nina wrote it down. She did the same thing the next morning when Elise told her Tessa had decided to narrow the waist. "Tessa did not say that in the fitting," Nina said. "She called me later. Then I'll note that the request came by phone." Elise glanced through the frosted door and saw me at my table. "Do not put Mara's name on the client copy," she said. "It confuses the chain of responsibility." Nina did not answer. She wrote the time of the instruction. Elise brought the gown to me after closing. "Take in the left side enough to sharpen the waist," she said. "You can hide the difference under the applique. The applique is on the right. Then balance it from the left. That will pull the neckline. You said you knew how to balance it." "I know how to balance it on Tessa at a fitting, after she agrees to the change." Elise placed both hands on my table. "Her wedding is Saturday. You are turning a simple adjustment into a ceremony because you are angry about money. Write the change on the ticket and ask her to come in. I own the shop. I do not need you to approve a ticket." "You do not need my approval. You need hers. And if you want me to do the work, you need mine." For a moment, she looked less like the polished owner from the front room and more like the girl who used to pull a seam apart too quickly and knot the thread. "You would let me fail to make a point," she said. "No. I am refusing to make your promise invisible." I put the gown back in its bag. The next morning, the ticket said the left side had been adjusted after closing. The stitching was neat enough from a distance, but it was machine work where I had left basting. The bodice leaned slightly even on the hanger. I did not need to ask who had done it. Joe used a shorter stitch. Nina never worked on structured bodices. Elise had chosen pale thread that disappeared on the lining but tightened at the turn. The mistake was not that she had sewn badly. The mistake was that she had tried to solve fit without the woman who had to wear the result. I hung the gown back exactly where I found it. By then, I understood that our problem was not disorganization. Elise was not forgetting to credit me and forgetting to pay me and forgetting which instructions belonged to the client. She was arranging the shop so that my work appeared when she needed it and disappeared when I did. That recognition did not make me brave all at once. It made me tired, and then exact. For the next 2 days, I completed only the work already written under my name. I hemmed a navy mother-of-the-bride dress, repaired a zipper shield, and finished the lining of a brown wool coat that belonged to a former client named Dana. Dana came in Wednesday afternoon and ran her hand along the repaired edge. "You cannot even see where it opened," she said. "You should not see the repair unless you go looking for it." Elise came out of the front room carrying Tessa's ticket. "Mara, I need you on the Lang bodice. Has Tessa tried it since the change?" "We are not discussing that in front of a client." Dana looked from Elise to me. "I'm only here for my coat." I gave her the total we had agreed on before the card decline. She paid me directly, because it had been my private repair, accepted before Elise changed the arrangement. As I folded her receipt, a green flyer slipped from Dana's tote. "You might like this," she said. "Neighborhood repair night at the community center. Ruth runs it. People bring coats, curtains, whatever they are afraid to ruin." A woman waiting near the doorway turned at the sound of her name. Ruth Alvarez was there to collect donated fabric from a box the shop kept by the register. She was 55, with silver at both temples and a measuring tape looped through the handle of her canvas bag. "We have machines," Ruth said. "We do not always have enough people who know what to do after threading them." "My mother is booked here," Elise said. Ruth looked at me rather than at her. "It's an open workshop. Come if you feel like sitting with us." There was no offer hidden inside it. No rescue. Just a chair on a Wednesday evening. I folded the flyer and put it in my coat pocket. The shop phone rang before Dana reached the door. Nina answered, listened, then held the receiver toward Elise. "It's Tessa. She says her pickup is tomorrow, but she thought she had a fitting today." Elise took the call into her office. 10 minutes later, she came out and said, "Tessa will be here Friday morning. The gown will be ready." "She needs to try it today," I said. "Are you sure?" "She cannot." "Then you cannot tell her it is ready." Elise looked at Nina. "Did you tell my mother about a private client call?" "Tessa asked about the fitting we originally scheduled," Nina said. "Which I changed." "Yes," Nina answered. "You changed it." On Friday morning, Tessa arrived carrying her shoes and a garment bag for her rehearsal dress. Her face had the flat, careful look of someone who had spent the week solving other people's emergencies. "I only have 40 minutes, she said. "Elise told me everything was finished." "It is," Elise said quickly. "There was a little looseness on one side because the first adjustment was uneven, but we corrected it." She did not look at me when she said the first adjustment. Nina wheeled the gown from the workroom. Joe stopped pressing a veil and watched over the top of the board. Elise helped Tessa into the gown and closed the zipper. Standing still, it looked almost acceptable. Then Tessa raised her arms. The neckline rotated toward her left shoulder. The right side held, the left side climbed. When she lowered her arms, a small ridge formed under the applique. Tessa stared into the mirror. It did not do that on Monday. Elise knelt near the hem, as though the problem might disappear if she viewed it from below. "The fabric relaxed," she said. "Mara released too much on the right." Then she turned to me. "Take her out of it and restore the right seam allowance the way you wrote on the workroom ticket. Lift the applique and rebalance it." The room went quiet. Elise had blamed me for releasing the right seam too far. In the same breath, she had ordered me to follow my note about restoring the allowance after somebody tightened the opposite side. I stepped onto the fitting platform. "Tessa, may I look at the inside of the bodice while you are wearing it?" She nodded. I folded the lining edge back just enough to show the seam. My original work was in long basting stitches, placed for a fitting. The later adjustment was a line of short machine stitches on the other side. "This is the seam I prepared," I said. "It can be moved after we check the balance on you." "This is a later adjustment." It pulled from the opposite side. Elise stood up. "Because your first fitting left it loose." "The first fitting left the wasties," Tessa requested. She changed her mind. Tessa turned her head. "No, I didn't." Elise's mouth opened, but Nina spoke first. "Elise said Tessa called," she said. "She did." I was at the desk all day. No call came from Tessa after Monday. She called my cell. "Then why did you tell me at 9:12 Tuesday morning to record the change as an owner adjustment?" Elise faced her. "Be careful, Nina." Nina's hands shook once. She placed them flat on the desk. "I am being careful." Mara required a fit check. I scheduled it for Thursday. You canceled it. You told me to move pickup to Friday and to leave Mara's name off the front copy. I read each change back because I did not want to misunderstand. She lifted the ordinary front ticket. There was no hidden file, no dramatic signature waiting at the bottom. Just the pickup line, the crossed-out fitting, and Nina's neat record of what she had been told. Elise looked toward Joe. "You know how many changes come through here." "That paper does not prove who made the mistake." "The stitches show when the choices changed," I said. "Nina is telling you who gave the instruction. Tessa is telling you what she asked for." "And you are enjoying this," Elise said. That was the old door she always offered me. If I defended myself emotionally, she could make the story about an overbearing mother. If I stayed quiet, she could use my hands and keep my name behind the glass. I did neither. "No," I said. "I am looking at a bride whose wedding is tomorrow." Tessa closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. "What can actually be done?" she asked. Elise answered before I could. "Mara can lift the appliqué without damaging it. She is the only person here who can do that fast enough." Joe lowered the iron. Nina looked at Elise, then at me. Tessa looked between us in the mirror. The question that had lived behind the frosted door was standing in the front room now. Elise had just told everyone that the woman she blamed for the shop's errors was also the only person she trusted with its hardest repair. I did not need to announce what that meant. "Mara?" Tessa said. I examined the neckline again. There was enough allowance to release Elise's counter-adjustment. The appliqué could be lifted at one edge and secured after a checked fit. The full cosmetic finish would take longer than the 40 minutes Tessa had, and longer than the afternoon if I was expected to make the stitches disappear properly. "I can release the later seam and rebalance the bodice while you are here," I said. "Then you need to put it on again before I secure the lace. That will make it wearable and centered. I cannot truthfully promise the full invisible finish today." Tessa's shoulders lowered. "What would the finish need?" "Several quiet hours and another check." "Do you still have the alterations contact your sister used?" She nodded. "Carla. She is doing my rehearsal dress. Call her and ask whether she can finish the lace after I stabilize the seam. Tell her exactly what has been done. If she cannot, we keep the edge secured, rather than pretend." Elise stepped toward us. The rest of the day went as smoothly as a day at the beach. "We are not sending our work out." Tessa looked at her. "It is my gown." That was the choice that changed the room. Nina had chosen not to repeat a false instruction. Tessa had chosen a limited truth over a complete promise. Neither choice came from a document. Both came from what Elise had asked them to deny in front of their own eyes. I turned to my daughter. I will do the stabilization I just described under my name with Tessa here for the check. After that, I am not available for work at this shop. Elise's face went still. You would walk out the day before her wedding. I am finishing what I promised her. I am not finishing the story you told about it. You are my mother. Yes. It was the simplest answer I gave her all morning. Being her mother was true. It did not answer who had done the work, who had changed the instruction, or who was responsible for the promise. Tessa changed into the rehearsal dress Carla was already expecting that afternoon. Nina called her from the desk with Tessa beside her. Carla could use that existing appointment to finish the lifted applique if I documented where I stopped. She did not solve the distorted fit or decide whom to trust. Tessa had already made those choices in the room. I carried the gown into the workroom, but I left the frosted door open. Elise stood at the edge of the fitting platform. Joe resumed pressing, slower than before. Nina returned to the desk and wrote Carla's pickup time on Tessa's copy. I removed Elise's short stitches one by one. A seam ripper can encourage haste because each thread gives with such a small motion. I had learned long ago that the cloth beneath remembers every impatient hand. I lifted the edge of the applique, released the left seam, and reset both sides with basting. When Tessa put the gown on again, I asked her to breathe, sit, raise her arms, and turn. The neckline stayed centered. That feels like Monday, she said. That is the ease you chose on Monday. I secured the lace edge for transport, wrote exactly what I had done, added the time, and signed my full name. Tessa read the note before I placed it in the bag. Thank you, she said. Then she thanked Nina. She did not shout at Elise. She did not threaten the shop. She collected her gown and left for her next appointment because her wedding was the important event in her life that week, not our family reckoning. After the door closed, Elise turned the lock and faced the three of us. No one discusses this with clients, she said. Nina answered first. I will discuss instructions that affect their garments. Joe set the iron upright. I am not accepting rush bodice changes unless the wearer comes back for a fitting. Elise looked at me. You planned this. I plan to buy thread on Monday. The answer sounded almost dry, but there was grief underneath it. I had not wanted a room full of witnesses. I had wanted my daughter to put an envelope in a drawer, leave my name on my work, and stop making care into permission. I went to my table and picked up my handbag. I will come back Tuesday for my personal tools, I said. Nina or Joe can be present while I list them. The machine belongs here. The industrial machine is mine. I have the purchase receipt at home. I will arrange a pickup after we agree on a time. I did not take it that day. I took my coat, my handbag, and the green repair night flyer still folded in the pocket. The shop did not collapse when I left. It had to become more honest about what it could accept. On Saturday, Tessa married in her gown. She sent Nina one photograph of the centered neckline and a message saying Carla had finished the lace. Nina showed me only because Tessa had asked her to. The following Monday, Elise kept the shop open. She moved 2 consultations and told 3 clients that complex changes would need longer timelines. Nina continued working at the desk, but she required changed pickup instructions to be written where the client could see them. Joe refused 2 rush bodice jobs that had no fitting time. For several days, Elise tried to spread my work across ordinary gaps. Joe could hem 3 layers of chiffon cleanly, so Elise gave her a corseted bodice between appointments. Joe returned it untouched and said she had never claimed that skill. Nina knew how to pin a strap for someone else to check, so Elise asked her to conduct a full fitting. Nina scheduled the client with an outside specialist instead. They were refusing to let the word team erase the difference between tasks. That difference had been easy to ignore while I absorbed it in the back room. Elise called me twice that week. The first time she asked where I kept the curved hand needles. I told her which drawer belonged to the shop and reminded her that my personal needles were on Tuesday's list. The second time, she said, a bride wanted to know why her appointment had moved. Tell her the shop does not currently have advanced work assigned for that hour, I said. You want me to humiliate myself. I want you to give her information she can use. She hung up. 20 minutes later, Nina sent a message asking whether I had agreed to return. I told her no. Elise had apparently said the scheduling problem would be resolved within the day. That small exchange showed me how the old arrangement had survived. Elise made a promise, and everyone looked toward the frosted door. I came through it because a real person was waiting in a half-finished garment. Each rescue made the next promise easier for Elise to offer. One client, with a heavily beaded gown, chose to move her alterations elsewhere after Nina explained that the shop no longer had someone assigned to advance structural work. She was not cruel about it. She said she needed certainty and took her dress. Elise posted an opening for an experienced alteration specialist. For the first time, the description separated consultation, basic sewing, and advanced construction, instead of folding them all into the word team. On Tuesday, I returned with a typed list: my shears, thimble, sleeve board, pressing cloths, hand needles, and industrial machine. Nina checked each item as I packed it. Joe helped a delivery driver roll the machine to the van I had rented for 1 hour. Elise stayed in her office. I found the original ceramic button dish in the back drawer, the one Elise had painted when she was 9. I held it for a moment, then left it where it was. It belonged to our history, but I did not need to carry every piece of that history out with me. When the machine crossed the threshold, I looked once at the frosted door. I had helped measure that film and smooth the bubbles from it. I had told myself it was only decoration. Standing outside the shop, I understood how often I had helped build the very partition that hurt me, because I believed helping was the same as loving. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday evening, I unfolded the green flyer and went to the neighborhood community center. The repair night met in a multi-purpose room that smelled faintly of coffee and hot dust from old radiators. 6 sewing machines sat on folding tables. There were jars of donated buttons, boxes of zippers, and a sign that said the room closed at 8:30. Ruth sat at the registration table. "Mara," she said, as though she had expected me without depending on me. "Are you here to teach us everything?" The question caught me. "No," I said. "I am here for 1 evening." "Good. Put your name down. Pick any chair." No one handed me a pile. No one introduced me as the answer to the room. I spent the first half hour shortening the strap of my own canvas bag. Then a woman named Pauline asked whether I would look at the torn lining of her coat. "Look, yes," I said. "Do it for you? No. But I can show you." We sat together. I showed her how to turn the raw edge under and make small stitches that caught the lining without coming through the wool. Her first stitches wandered. Her next ones held. At 8:20, someone brought me a pair of pants and asked if I could take them home. "No," I said. "Ruth can tell you when the next repair night is." The word left my mouth without an apology attached. At 8:30, Ruth turned off the overhead lights above the machines. "You know how to stop," she said. "I am learning." She handed me one sheet of paper. It was not a contract, and it was not a job. It was a request for a proposal. 4 evening sessions on basic alterations, with boxes for hours, supplies, and the rate I would charge. "Our budget is modest," she said, "and I do not want you taking work home. If we cannot agree, you are still welcome on Wednesdays." That mattered to me. The chair was not conditional on how useful I could be. At home, I filled in the page at my kitchen desk. I listed 2 hours of teaching and half an hour of setup per session. I listed the tools the center would supply: I wrote that participants had to bring garments clean and that no bridal or formal reconstruction would be promised in class. Then I wrote my rate. My hand paused over the number, the old reflex asking whether I was being difficult. I left the number where it was. Ruth called the next day. "We can do 4 sessions at that rate," she said. "After 4, we stop and decide again." That works for me. 6 weeks after I left Bell Bridal, I taught my first class. There were 9 adults in the room. We measured sleeves, practiced pressing on scrap fabric, and learned why the first answer to a crooked hem was not always to cut it shorter. I asked each person to put on the garment, move, and look before making a permanent change. Pauline attended with the same coat. Her lining repair had held. At the end, 2 people asked whether I accepted private work. I gave each of them a plain appointment card with my name, a new phone number, and the 2 mornings I was available. I did not use the shop's client list. I did not call brides, I remembered. The people who came to me came because they had watched me work, learned beside me, or received my name from someone who asked permission to share it. The money began modestly. A jacket sleeve, 3 pairs of work pants, a zipper in a choir robe. I kept each job on 1 page, with the customer's request, the agreed price, and the fitting or pickup time. Some mornings I earned less than I once found in the Friday envelope. Some mornings no one booked the second hour, and I used it to clean my machine or practice a pocket repair on scrap. Independence did not arrive as a full calendar. It arrived as an empty hour that still belonged to me. I learned to say what a job would cost before opening the seam. I learned to include pressing time instead of treating it as something that happened for free after the real work. If I found damage that changed the job, I stopped and called. Most people appreciated being asked. A few wanted the old answer, the promise that everything could be done cheaply and by tomorrow. I let those jobs go. Pauline became my first repeat customer. After the coat lining, she brought a church jacket with sleeves that covered half her hands. At the fitting, she asked whether I missed bridal work. "I miss the care people bring to an important garment," I said. "I do not miss pretending care can ignore time." She nodded as though that answer applied to more than sleeves. Then she asked me to mark the jacket where her wrists actually bent. There was no frosted copy and front copy. There was 1 page, and both of us could read it. The owner of a shared tailoring room heard about my class through Ruth. She had an empty table on Tuesday and Thursday mornings and offered it to me for a small weekly rate. I visited before agreeing. The room had good light, grounded outlets, 2 pressing stations, and a lockable cabinet. "I leave at noon," I told her. "Then your table is yours until noon." 3 months after I left Elise's shop, I was working there 2 mornings a week. On a Thursday, I had a men's jacket on my table and a choir robe waiting for a zipper check. At 10:15, my phone rang. Elise's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Mom, I need you," she said. The words reached the part of me that still knew the shape of her hand at 9 years old, full of sorted buttons. "What happened?" "A bridal fitting. The back is collapsing above the waist stay. I can send Nina to pick you up. I have customers scheduled. This will take you an hour." I looked at the jacket in front of me. Its owner was due at 11. "I am not leaving the work I accepted." Elise exhaled. "I said I need you." "I heard you. I can pay you later." I am still sorting out what happened with the envelopes. The $168 is still unresolved. It is separate from any new work. Silence. Then she said, "So this is punishment?" "No." "If you want to ask about a separate appointment next week, send the garment details, the fitting time, and the rate you are offering. I will decide whether I am available. I will not come today, and I will not work without my name on the job." You know I cannot explain all of that to a bride. Then we are not ready to work together. I expected anger. Instead, I heard the front bell of her shop through the phone and Nina's voice in the distance. Elise said, "I'll call you later. Call when you are ready to discuss those terms." She ended the call. I did not know whether she would. A boundary does not guarantee that the other person will cross back toward you honestly. It only makes the honest route visible. At 11, the jacket owner arrived. He put on the jacket and moved both arms as I asked. The right cuff sat a quarter-inch lower after he bent his elbow. I repinned it. On the work page, under my own name, I noted the adjustment. I confirmed the price and Friday pickup with him. When noon came, I covered my machine, returned the jacket to its bag, and turned off the light above my table. The next page in my appointment book was already waiting for Friday's work.